Wednesday. This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, we are live in Los Angeles on iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, and FS1. Last night, I went to a dinner with a bunch of football coaches, Joy Taylor, and it was as much fun as I can have. Having a steak and talking to football coaches for 2 hours.
That sounds like a good night.
I spent some time sitting next to Mario Cristobal, Oregon football coach, who coached under Saban, played under Jimmy Johnson, Miami guy, and his beautiful wife. I thought about you. We talked about Miami and how he grew up, and I think he grew up near Little Havana, which is where the baseball stadium is now.
Yeah, that's where Marlins Park is.
Yep. So it was a fun night for me talking football. It starts to smell different in about 3 weeks. The grass, you can start smelling the grass. The fall's coming. I want to start with this. I've always believed this. You deserve the life you are willing to accept. They always say that about politics. You deserve the candidate that the country elects. In America, you elect them, you deserve them, right? They all campaign. They all make their promises. We have like 2 years to think about it. Are you in Dallas willing to accept Ezekiel Elliott's immaturity, his off-season maintenance? Because it's now officially, it's part of him. Okay, it's like moving to Alaska. They've got dark, long winters. Okay, moving to Hawaii. They get some storms. It can be really hot. That's part of Alaska and Hawaii. Part of Zeke is the court dates, the judicial nonsense, the Vegas videos, the meeting with Roger Goodell. And Jerry Seinfeld used to have an old bit about when the bill should arrive at restaurants, and it reminds me of Ezekiel Elliott. Let me play the bit by Jerry Seinfeld on when you should pay at restaurants.
Money, if you think about it, is a very different thing before and after you eat. Before you eat, money has absolutely no value. Do you know that when you sit down at the table, you're like the ruler of an empire? More drinks, more appetizers. We must have everything immediately, the greatest meal of our lives. Then after you eat, first of all, when you're really full, you can't remember ever being hungry ever in your life. You got the pants open, napkins destroyed, cigarette butt in the mashed potatoes. It's not really festive. They give you the check, we were like, what is this? I don't understand. People are always mystified by the check, aren't they? They start passing it around the table. Does this look right to you? We're not hungry now. Why are we buying all this food?
So the premise of Seinfeld's joke is you should really pay before the meal, because that's when you really want the food. When you're stuffed, you're always mystified. I got to pay now. That's how I feel about Zeke. In the season, week 7, fourth quarter, on the road, trailing Philadelphia, 4.5 to go, I need Zeke. Man, I want to pay for Zeke. I want to pay for Zeke. The off-season stuff, he has no value to me. In fact, I think he's negative value. I think he's a distraction. And so when I look at Zeke, it comes down to, and my new name for him is TM Zeke. TM Zeke. Are you willing to accept that? Because you deserve what you're willing to accept in life. And these distractions going into a year where the Rams are loaded in the NFC, Green Bay's loaded, Chicago's loaded, Philadelphia's loaded. Are you willing to accept it? Because let's be honest about this. If Dak was as talented as Deshaun Watson, Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, you wouldn't be perhaps having all these discussions. The minute Kareem Hunt became a problem, Kansas City's like, we don't need you. We got Patrick Mahomes. The minute the Seahawks got noisy, Pete Carroll's like, we don't need you. We got Russell Wilson. The reason the Patriots can bail on players, Darrelle Revis, because they have Tom Brady. If Dak was more talented, you would be much less tolerant of the preseason nonsense of Zeke, which tells you probably that Dak is limited. If you had Patrick Mahomes with this Cowboy team, you would not feel beholden to Zeke. By the way, this is one of the things the Rams felt they had to give Gurley a contract because Jared Goff is very young. And they felt Jared Goff needed 3 years of development before he could be the guy they could have B running backs with. But with Jared Goff, now they feel like they need an A. Now Gurley gets hurt. The question is he an A? But they wouldn't pay Gurley a year early on his contract if they had Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson. They wouldn't have to. This is why quarterback is so crucial in the NFL. If you have an A quarterback, and there's about 8, you don't get trapped with nonsense. You don't become beholden to great players who are a headache. This is why Seattle can move off noise, Russell Wilson. Why Kansas City feels they can move off not only troublesome players, but good players, D Ford, Justin Houston, Patrick Mahomes. Because owners will always be a mixed bag. Some owners are very tolerant, Jerry Jones, of players who make noise. Other owners, Seattle's group, not as tolerant. Paul Allen, the late Paul Allen. So it's funny when I look at TM Zeke, and I look at all this stuff. There's more talk today. He may hold out. He's not holding out. Melvin Gordon, by the way, is for sure. But Zeke's got 2 years on this thing. This is why you got to get the quarterback right. Because in season, Zeke feels worth paying the bill. Out of season, he absolutely does not. But the Cowboys, to some degree, are trapped. How much do you pay Dak? They're trapped. Let me shift to this. This is kind of breaking news. The Packers released Mike Daniels, who 2 years ago was a Pro Bowler. He's on the defensive line. Green Bay, this is freak-out time. Because the first thing everybody's going to do is, wait a minute. We had to pay Aaron Rodgers $35 million. Now we can't keep a Pro Bowl defensive lineman. That is the consequence, right, of having a great quarterback. But let me defend Green Bay here, and let me defend Aaron Rodgers. Green Bay, this is a very New England move. Green Bay knew 2 years ago that they were going to have to pay Aaron Rodgers $30-some million a year. And what did Green Bay do? They loaded up on the defensive side of the ball. They now have one of the youngest defenses in the NFL, and I think it's going to prove to be one of the more talented within a year or two. Allowing them to move off Mike Daniels, a very good player who last year had a foot injury, at 30 years old, appears to have peaked, even though he was a Pro Bowler 2 years ago. This is exactly what New England does. Somebody's recently been a Pro Bowler. They may show some signs of age, and New England cuts bait, and they go to Tennessee or they go to the Jets, and they get paid a lot. And you're like, oh, boy, New England was smart. So the natural reaction today is, oh, Aaron Rodgers' contract is why we have to get rid of Mike Daniels. And the truth is, Green Bay has been planning these sort of moves, and you're going to see more of them for the last 2 years. By the way, Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, they know they're a year out from the Brinks truck. What did they do? D Ford, let him go. Niners paid for him. Justin Houston, let him go. Colts paid for him. You got to get comfortable in the NFL, not the NBA, letting go of really, really good players. You just got to get comfortable with it. And the minute you pay your quarterback $35 million, you better not get caught off guard. You better do what Kansas City's doing this past year with D Ford and Justin Houston. You better do what Green Bay just did. Don't blame Aaron for this. This has actually been planned for 2 years. This is a really good sign by the Packers, who I thought for years didn't really have a game plan with Aaron. They never gave him a good running game. The defense was always average to below average. This is a well-run franchise. Moving off a 30-year-old, very good player, still serviceable. Somebody will pick him up. Only played 10 games last year, and they got Rashawn Gary from Michigan. They've got all these young defensive players. 2 years ago, they started drafting defense. Joey and I have talked about this. They went crazy in the draft. All defensive players for this move. It's very savvy and very smart, and Mike Daniels will be fine. He can still play. Coming up next, You would think the NFL is the most popular sport, right? By a mile. Like the Pro Bowl gets higher ratings than, everything outside of like the World Series and the NBA Finals and the World Cup. It's wildly popular. Do NFL players look at certain contracts and go, what about us? Because 18-year-old Zion Williamson, he may be 19, just signed a $75 million shoe deal. How does that play in the rest of the leagues? That's coming up. Plus, Nick Wright, LeVar Arrington, Jane Slater covers the Cowboys for the NFL Network. She'll stop by as well. You've heard of me talking about Four Hymns for about a year now. And there are certain conversations with men's health that are just better served if they're done offline and maybe discreet. 66% of men lose their hair by the age of 35, at least start to. If you're noticing it, you're probably a tad late. That's where Four Hymns comes in. 4Hymns.com. One-stop shop for skincare, sexual wellness, hair loss for guys. And you know what? Science now makes baldness a lot more optional. This is prescription solutions backed by science. Okay? No more awkward in-person doctor visits. No long, brutal, tiring pharmacy lines. They just connect you to real doctors online. Save you hours. It's completely confidential and discreet. Order now for $5. Get the complete hair kit. $5. Go to the website. They have full details, and they have safety information. Go to 4Hymns.com/Colin, FORHIMS.com.